You're standing at your hydrangea right now, and you're looking at the same thing I once stared at in a panic. The leaves are drooping in the afternoon like the whole plant gave up. The flower heads that were so full in June are browning at the edges. And you're wondering if you did something wrong, or if it's just too late to save it. Here's the truth almost nobody tells you. What your hydrangea does in August decides whether you get a single bloom next summer. Not next month, next year. The wilting and the browning you're seeing are clues, and most gardeners read them completely backward. I know, because I read them backward too, and I nearly killed a plant I'd grown for 11 years. I'm going to walk you through the 7 things your hydrangea needs this month, the way a detective walks through a case. We'll rule out the obvious wrong answers first. And near the end, I'll show you a bud timing secret the Royal Horticultural Society has documented for decades, one that quietly saves the flowers before they ever form. This works whether your plant is 3 months old or 30 years old, whether it's thriving or already looks half gone. Let me take you back to the August. I almost lost my big old mop head. It was the summer of a brutal heat run, and every afternoon by 3 o'clock that plant collapsed like a rag. I panicked. I grabbed the hose. And the panic is exactly what made everything worse. So let's start with that very first clue, the one that fools nearly everyone. The afternoon wilt. You walk outside on a hot day and your hydrangea is limp, leaves hanging down, flowers sagging. Every instinct in your body says the plant is thirsty. Water it, quick, before it dies. But here is what I learned the hard way. That midday droop is very often not thirst at all. Hydrangeas have big, soft leaves with a huge surface area, and on a hot afternoon, they lose water through those leaves faster than the roots can pull it up. So the plant does something smart. It wilts on purpose. It lets the leaves go limp to reduce the surface facing the sun. It's a protective reflex, not a cry for water. And the proof is simple. Go out and look at that very same plant early the next morning before the heat comes. If the leaves are firm and perked up again, the roots were never dry. The soil had plenty of moisture. The plant was just riding out the heat the only way it knows how. Now, here's why this matters so much, and why my panic nearly finished my plant. When I saw that afternoon wilt, I drenched the soil every single day, sometimes twice. I thought I was rescuing it. What I was actually doing was drowning the roots. Hydrangea roots need air pockets in the soil. When you keep the ground soggy day after day, those air pockets fill with water. The fine feeder roots suffocate, and they begin to rot. And a hydrangea with rotting roots wilts even harder, because now it truly can't drink. So I saw more wilting, and I watered even more, and I dug the hole deeper without ever knowing it. The fix is almost embarrassingly simple. Before you water, push your finger down into the soil 2 inches deep, right at the base of the plant. If it's damp down there, put the hose away. The plant does not need it. If it's dry 2 inches down, then yes, water. But water in the early morning, not the blazing afternoon, and water deeply and slowly so it soaks down instead of running off. So the first clue, the dramatic afternoon collapse, usually isn't the emergency it looks like. That's a relief. But it raises a harder question. If daily watering is the wrong answer, then how do you keep the roots cool and steady through a heat wave without drowning them? Because that answer is where the real August care begins. The answer starts underground, with the thing I ignored for years. Mulch. And I don't mean a thin, tidy dusting for looks. I mean a real protective blanket over the root zone. Here's the part most people miss. A hydrangea's most active feeder roots sit in the top few inches of soil, exactly where the August sun bakes the hardest. When that top layer heats up and dries out in cycles, wet in the morning, bone dry and hot by afternoon, the roots get stressed over and over. That constant swing is far more damaging than the heat itself. It's like being fed a full meal and then starved every single day. Mulch ends the swing. A layer of 2 to 3 inches of shredded bark, leaf mold, or compost over the root zone keeps the soil temperature steady and holds moisture far longer between waterings. University Extension Services across the United States recommend that 2 to 3 inch depth specifically, and there's a reason for the ceiling. Pile it thicker than 3 inches. Or heap it right up against the woody stems, and you trap too much moisture against the crown and invite rot. So keep it a couple of inches back from the main stems, like a donut, not a volcano. When I finally mulched my struggling plant properly, I could feel the difference with my own hand. I'd push my fingers under that bark layer at 4 in the afternoon on a scorching day, and the soil underneath was cool and damp, while the bare ground a few feet away was hot and cracked. That cool, steady root zone is what lets a hydrangea sail through a heat wave without the daily drama, and mulch does something for next year that you won't see until then. It protects the crown of the plant, that base where old stems meet the ground, and the crown is where a great deal of the plant's future lives. Keep that zone steady now, and you're already protecting blooms that haven't even formed yet. But mulch only handles the soil. It does nothing for the leaves and flower heads getting scorched from above. And that brown, crispy edge creeping across your blooms right now, that's the next clue, and it points somewhere most people never think to look. Look closely at where the browning starts. It almost always begins on the side of the plant that faces the hottest afternoon sun, usually the west or southwest side. The flower edges go papery and tan, the leaf margins crisp up, and it spreads inward. Most gardeners see this and immediately think disease. They reach for a spray, but this isn't a fungus and it isn't a bug. It's sunburn, plain and simple. Big leaf hydrangeas, the classic mopheads and lace caps, evolved as woodland edge plants. In the wild, they grow with morning sun and dappled afternoon shade, sheltered by taller trees. We plant them out in the open in full blazing sun and then wonder why they scorch in August. During the hottest weeks, that afternoon sun is simply too much for their soft tissue, and the flowers, which have no way to cool themselves, take the worst of it. Now, you can't move a mature shrub in the middle of summer. That's the mistake I almost made, deciding to dig it up and relocate it in the July heat, which would have shocked it half to death. So here's what you do instead, right now, this season. You give it temporary afternoon shade, a length of shade cloth on a couple of stakes on the west side, an old sheet draped over the plant during the worst hours, even a patio umbrella angled to block the 3 o'clock sun. It looks a little silly, I know. But blocking that harsh afternoon light for even a few hours can stop the scorching cold and save the blooms you still have. And if the shade is doing its job, you'll see it in a week. The new growth stops crisping. The remaining flower heads hold their color instead of bleaching to brown paper. You've bought the plant time to recover its strength before autumn. So we've ruled out disease on those brown edges. It was the sun all along. That's 2 false alarms solved. But it brings us to a mistake that doesn't announce itself with wilting or browning at all. This one is completely invisible until it's too late, and it's probably the single most common thing well-meaning gardeners get wrong in August. It's feeding. Specifically, feeding your hydrangea the wrong thing at the wrong time out of pure kindness. Here's the trap. Your plant looks a little stressed from the heat, the leaves seem tired, so you think, I'll give it a boost, a nice feed to perk it up. You reach for a general fertilizer, the kind high in nitrogen, the first number on the bag, and your instinct to help is exactly what sets the plant up to suffer. Nitrogen tells a plant to do one thing above all else: grow. Push out new leaves, new soft green shoots, fast. And in April or May, that's wonderful. But in August, it's the last thing you want. A hydrangea in late summer should be slowing down, hardening its growth, and getting ready to rest. If you hit it with nitrogen now, you force a flush of tender new growth at exactly the wrong moment. That soft growth has no time to toughen up before the cold comes, so it gets damaged by the first frosts. Worse, all that energy poured into new leaves is energy stolen from where it needs to go. Because here is the thing happening inside your plant right now that you cannot see. Your hydrangea is beginning to form the flower buds for next summer. On the old wood types, the mopheads and lace caps, those buds for next year are being set in late summer and early autumn on this year's stems. The plant is quietly deciding, right now, how many flowers you get next June. And nitrogen feeding in August yanks its attention away from that job and throws it into growing floppy leaves instead. The Royal Horticultural Society is clear on this. Stop feeding big leaf hydrangeas with nitrogen-rich fertilizer by late summer. In most gardens, that means your last proper feed should have been back around midsummer, and from August onward, you let the plant settle. If you want to support it, the right nutrient now is potassium, the kind that helps ripen wood and encourage flower buds, not the kind that forces leaf growth. Some old school growers give a light dose of a high potassium feed, the same sort you'd give tomatoes in late summer. But honestly, for most of us, the kindest thing in August is simply to stop with the nitrogen and let the plant do its quiet work. I confess this one stung to learn because feeding felt like love. I thought a hungry looking plant needed a meal. Really, it needed me to step back and let it prepare for the future. If you're standing at that plant right now, one hand hovering with the hose, one eye on those tired leaves, not sure whether you're helping or hurting, I know that feeling exactly. That doubt is the real problem, and it doesn't stop at hydrangeas. It's clematis that won't flower, roses that underperform, a whole garden where you're never quite sure what each plant needs or when. That's the reason I put everything into the complete bloom system. It's a month-by-month care blueprint covering every ornamental plant you grow, with a seasonal map that tells you exactly what each plant needs and when, so you stop guessing and start reading your garden the way you're learning to read this hydrangea. First bloom, deep roots, and the full bloom system, all in one place, with ready-to-use templates so you never lose another beloved plant. And here's something you can test for free tonight. Go out to any struggling plant, push your finger 2 inches into the soil, and let what you find, not your worry, decide whether it drinks. That one habit alone will change how you garden. The fastest way to get the books is to scan the QR code right there on your screen, or go to the link in the description or the pinned comment. And this matters now for a simple reason. Your hydrangea is setting next year's buds this very month, so the care you get right today is care you can't get back later. Now let me talk to the gardeners whose plants already look too far gone to save. So we've cleared 4 clues now. The afternoon wilt was heat, not thirst. The brown edges were sun, not disease. The tired look didn't need feeding, it needed rest. And underneath it all, we've uncovered the real drama. Your plant is building next year's flowers as we speak. Which means the next question is the one that keeps devoted gardeners up at night. What if your plant is already stressed, already damaged, already looking like it's too far gone to save? That's exactly who I want to talk to now. If you're standing there with a hydrangea that looks rough, browned, floppy, half the leaves crisped, maybe a whole cane that's gone brown and brittle, I want you to take a breath, because this next part is for you and your established plant specifically. I've brought plants back from worse than what you're describing, and August is actually a forgiving time to do it, as long as you don't panic the way I did. First, do the test that tells you the plant is still alive and worth saving. Go to a stem that looks dead and gently scratch the bark with your thumbnail, just a tiny scrape. If you see green underneath, that stem is alive, and you leave it completely alone. Do not cut it. I'll explain why in a moment, but the short version is that live stem is holding next year's flower buds. Only if you scratch and find brown, dry, brittle wood all the way through, and the stem snaps like a dry twig instead of bending, is that cane truly dead. Those fully dead canes you can remove at the base, because they're not coming back and they're just draining the plant's attention. Second, for a heat-battered plant, resist every urge to do a big rescue pruning. A stressed hydrangea in August does not want to be cut back hard. Cutting forces it to try to regrow in the worst heat of the year, and that new growth won't harden before winter. Leave the shape alone. Your job right now isn't to reshape the plant, it's to stabilize it. Here's how you stabilize a damaged, established hydrangea this week. Give it that 2 to 3 inch mulch blanket we talked about to cool and steady the roots. Give it temporary afternoon shade for the next few weeks to stop any more scorching. Water it deeply, but only when the soil is dry 2 inches down in the early morning, so the roots can rehydrate without drowning. And this is the hard part for people like us who love to fuss, you leave it alone. No feeding, no cutting, no daily drenching. You give it cool roots, gentle shade, and steady moisture, and you let the plant heal itself. A mature hydrangea has years of stored energy in its roots and crown. Give it stable conditions and it will very often push out fresh, healthy growth and quietly set its buds despite the rough summer it's had. I've watched a plant that looked 2/3 dead in early August come back with a full head of blooms the following June, purely because I stopped interfering and just made it comfortable. That plant taught me that rescue is usually about doing less, not more. But there's one specific mistake in this rescue that undoes everything, and it happens with the very best intentions. It's about those old, browning flower heads and whether you should cut them off. And getting this wrong in August can quietly cost you every single bloom next year. Let's talk about deadheading, because this is where the mystery starts to come together. All summer, you've been snipping spent blooms to keep things tidy, and that's fine. But there is a right way and a wrong way to do it in late summer, and the difference is enormous. When you cut off an old flower head on a big leaf hydrangea, you have to be careful how far down you go. Because look, just below that faded bloom, down at the leaf joints on that same stem, small, fat buds are forming. Those are next year's flowers. If you deadhead by cutting a long way down the stem, the way people do when they want a tidy shape, you are slicing off the exact buds that would have become next summer's blooms. You've deadheaded your whole next season away, and you won't find out until June when nothing appears. So the safe method in late summer is to cut only the spent flower itself, snipping just above the first strong pair of leaves right below the old bloom. That removes the tired flower for tidiness while leaving all those precious buds down the stem untouched. Better yet, on old wood mop heads and lace caps, many experienced growers stop cutting altogether by late summer and simply leave the faded heads on the plant right through winter. And that's not laziness, it's protection. Those dried flower heads and the upper stems act like a little shelter over the tender buds beneath them through the cold months. Leaving them on gives those buds a layer of frost protection they wouldn't have if you'd cut everything back to neat stubs in autumn. You wait until spring, until you see the buds swelling and the danger of hard frost has passed, and only then do you tidy up. It's the traditional practice, and it exists for a reason. I learned this the painful way. One tidy-minded autumn, years ago, I cut my mop head back hard because I wanted it neat over winter. The plant looked immaculate, and the next June I got a lush green bush and almost no flowers, and I had no idea why. I blamed the weather. I blamed the soil. I blamed everything except the shears in my own hand. It took me another full season to understand I had cut the flowers off myself, months before they would have bloomed. So now you can see the shape of the whole mystery. The wilting, the browning, the feeding, the cutting, they all circle back to one thing. Next year's flowers are being decided right now in August, and almost every common mistake quietly destroys them. Which brings us, finally, to the deepest clue of all, the one that ties every symptom together and reveals the real cause I promised you at the very start. Here it is, the secret at the heart of it. The single most important thing your hydrangea needs in August is uninterrupted moisture during the exact weeks it is setting next year's flower buds. And a single serious dry out during this window doesn't just wilt the plant. It can abort the flower buds before they ever fully form, so that next summer, no matter what you do, the blooms simply never come. Let me explain why this is the buried truth, because it took me years and a lot of reading to understand it. We've all been told hydrangeas like water. The name itself comes from the Greek for water vessel, but almost nobody connects the watering to the calendar. The Royal Horticultural Society, along with University Extension research on big leaf hydrangeas, points to the same quiet fact. These old wood hydrangeas initiate their flower buds for the following year in late summer and early autumn. That bud formation is the plant's most delicate act of the whole year, and it is happening at the hottest, driest moment of the season, right when the plant is most likely to suffer drought stress. So, picture what happens in the average garden. August turns hot and dry. The gardener, told for years not to overwater, or simply away on holiday, lets the plant go dry for a stretch. The hydrangea wilts hard, recovers, wilts hard again over several days. To the gardener, it looks fine afterward. The leaves perk back up, no harm done, they think. But inside, during that drought stress, the plant made a survival decision. It cannot afford to build flowers when it's fighting to stay alive, so it quietly sacrifices the developing buds to save itself. The buds never mature, and the following June, that same healthy-looking green plant produces almost nothing, and the heartbroken gardener has no idea that the flowers were lost 10 months earlier in a single dry week in August. This is why so much mainstream advice misses it. Everyone focuses on the blooms you can see fading now, and nobody points at the invisible buds forming for next year. The cause and the consequence are separated by nearly a full year, so almost no one connects them. But the careful old growers knew. The traditional wisdom of keeping a big leaf hydrangea evenly, consistently moist through late summer, never bone dry, never swampy, was never just about this year's show. It was about protecting the flowers you couldn't yet see. And the fix is completely within your reach this weekend, no matter how long you've grown your plant. Through the rest of August and into September, you keep the root zone consistently, gently moist during this bud set window. That means the mulch blanket to hold moisture steady. It means checking the soil at 2 inches deep every couple of days in hot weather and giving a deep, slow morning soak whenever it's dry down there, rather than letting the plant swing between drenched and parched. It means the afternoon shade that reduces the water stress in the first place. Every single thing we've talked about today, the mulch, the shade, the careful watering, the no nitrogen rest, all of it serves this one hidden purpose: protecting the buds while they form. Get those few weeks right, keep your hydrangea from ever hitting a hard, wilting drought during bud set, and you have done the one thing that matters most for next year's flowers. That's the whole secret. It was never about rescuing this year's fading blooms. It was about quietly guarding the ones that haven't been born yet. The first year, I finally understood this. I babied that 11-year-old mophead through a hot August. Mulch down, shade cloth up on the west side, a deep morning soak whenever my finger came up dry, and not one drop of fertilizer. It didn't look dramatically different that autumn, but the following June, that plant carried more blooms than I had seen on it in years, great heavy heads bending the stems, and I finally knew it wasn't luck. It was August. So when you look at your hydrangea now, I hope you don't see a plant that's failing you. I hope you see a plant quietly asking you to help it through the most important few weeks of its year, so it can hand you a summer full of flowers in return. You're not guessing anymore, you can read it now. You are exactly the kind of gardener who doesn't give up on a plant you've poured years of care into, and that's the whole reason next year's blooms are still yours to protect. A little cool soil, a little shade, steady water at the right moment, and you've done what most people never figure out in a lifetime of growing. Now I want to hear from you. Which clue did you spot on your own hydrangea, the afternoon wilt, the brown scorched edges, or the tired look that made you want to feed it? Tell me in the comments which one you saw, and tell me where in the world you're gardening from. Because a hot August in Georgia and a hot August in the south of England ask slightly different things of us. I read these and I answer. And if reading your plant instead of guessing at it is how you want to garden from now on, come join us, because that's exactly what we do here, one plant and one symptom at a time. Next, I want to show you the strange thing hydrangea leaves do in early autumn. A reddening and spotting that terrifies people into spraying, when it's very often something completely harmless, and one specific case where it isn't. Once you learn to tell those two apart, you'll never panic at an autumn leaf again. Before you go, let me tell you something. Inside the Blooming Garden Circle, I continue this very video, walking you through the full August hydrangea routine, right where we stopped. And if you get stuck, you can ask me directly and I answer myself, a real person, not a machine. You won't be doing this alone. So many gardeners like you are already there with me. Just point your phone at the code, cancel anytime. I'm Mary, come inside. Now that your hydrangeas are cared for, let's tackle something that's been stealing their strength. The next video shows you how to clear out spurge weed for good, so your whole garden can finally thrive. It's starting right here.